Miles to midnight. I don't know why I took the detour that night. The main road was clear, and it wasn't even that late, but something in me veered off onto that quiet stretch of asphalt winding through the empty fields. The GPS had gone silent miles back, as if it recognized this place as outside of its jurisdiction. The road was smooth, too smooth. My tires barely hummed against the pavement, making everything feel eerily still. The only sound was the soft rush of wind against the car, but even that seemed muted, like it was passing through some invisible barrier before it reached me. There were no streetlights, just the soft blue wash of my headlights stretching out into the void. The world beyond the road was swallowed by darkness. I could almost hear the silence pressing in from all sides. It was the kind of quiet that clings to your skin, makes you want to breathe louder just to make sure you still exist. Miles, it's not too late to turn around. My boss's voice rang in my head, low and coaxing. I hated how he spoke to me like I was a performance dog he was training. My fingers tightened around the steering wheel, remembering the way he'd brush his hand over mine in meetings, lingering just long enough to make his intentions clear. The raise had been worth it, I'd told myself. Just a few months of playing along, and it wasn't like I was seeing anybody else or anybody else was looking for me. It wasn't his fault. Maybe he too was blue, starving for a warm touch. But even as I thought it, a cold knot of disgust curled in my stomach. The first sign that something was wrong came when I noticed the road seemed to stretch forever. I'd been driving for what felt like hours, the dashboard clock stuck on 9:47 p.m., the same minute it had been when I first took the turn. I tried switching radio stations, but all I got was static, the kind that hisses and whispers just on the edge of comprehension. I was the only car out there, alone in the headlights' glow, and I began to notice the air had a taste, dry, metallic like blood. It caught in my throat, made me swallow hard. My mouth felt like I'd licked dust from an old book. A strange tingling crept up my spine, spreading out to the tips of my fingers, like the air itself was alive, watching. "Everything all right, Miles? You're awfully quiet," he'd asked earlier that day, leaning in too close, his breath hot against my ear. I could still feel the shiver that ran through me, but it wasn't just from his presence. It was the monotony, the suffocating dullness of my life, of the choices I'd made. Then out of the corner of my eye I saw something. It was just a flicker, a shadow darting through the trees that lined the road, or maybe it was just my imagination trying to fill the emptiness. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel, the leather warm and slightly tacky under my fingers, like skin that's been left in the sun too long. The smell hit me next, faint at first, then overwhelming. It was a mix of damp earth, rotting wood, and something sharp, almost like burnt sugar. I rolled up the windows, but the scent only grew stronger, as if it was seeping out from the car itself. A flash of movement caught my eye again, closer this time, right at the edge of the headlights. I slammed on the brakes, heart pounding. My breath was shallow, chest tight. I leaned forward, squinting into the dark, trying to make sense of what I'd seen. There was nothing there. Just the empty road and the silent trees. But then a shape started to form in the shadows, tall, thin, more like an outline than anything solid. It stood motionless, just beyond the reach of my headlights, almost blending in with the night. "Are you ignoring me, Miles? You're not drifting away, are you?" I could almost hear my boss's voice slithering into my thoughts, the smugness in it crawling under my skin. My pulse roared in my ears as I stared at the shadow, unable to move. The figure didn't advance, didn't retreat. It was as if it was waiting, suspended in the space between seconds, just as trapped as I was. Then something strange happened. The world around me blurred, twisted, like I was seeing it through someone else's eyes. My body felt heavy, distant, and the air grew even thicker, wrapping around me like a wet blanket. I tried to blink, to shake off the disorienting sensation, but my eyelids wouldn't respond. Panic surged through me as I realized I wasn't just seeing the figure. I was becoming it. My thoughts fragmented, scattered like dead leaves in a storm as a strange, alien consciousness seeped into my mind, cold and probing. I could feel the rough bark of the trees, the dampness of the earth beneath my feet that were no longer mine. The night air was sharp, filled with the scent of scorched sugar, and I tasted the charred sweetness that filled this place, savoring it like it was life itself. The headlights of the car were a distant glow, something I knew I should remember, but the thought slipped away as my focus shifted to the car, to the prey inside it me. I tried to scream, to claw my way back, but the more I fought, the more I could feel myself slipping into the creature's mind, drowning in its hunger. My vision flickered between two worlds, my hands gripping the steering wheel, the creature's fingers digging into the earth. The night felt alive, pulsating with a rhythm that wasn't human, a rhythm that was pulling me deeper into its beat. Miles, come back to me. A voice, not my boss's but something darkly nostalgic, echoed in my mind, almost comforting in its coldness. I felt my consciousness fray, the boundary between us thinning until it was almost gone. But then, in a flash of desperate clarity, I remembered the car, the steering wheel slick with sweat beneath my fingers. I was still there, somewhere inside that body. With every ounce of will I had left, I jerked the wheel, slamming my foot down on the gas. The engine roared to life and the car shot forward, the tires screeching as they gripped the road. For a terrifying second, I felt the creature's mind rip free from mine. A cold, searing pain that left me gasping. My vision snapped back to my own perspective just as the car plowed into the figure. There was a sickening crunch, a flash of darkness, and then I was back in my body, the wheel trembling under my hands, my heart thudding against my ribs. The headlights illuminated nothing but an empty road, the shadowy figure gone as if it had never existed. I slammed on the brakes, the car skidding to a stop. My breath came in ragged gasps, the taste of metal and char still clinging to my tongue. The clock on the dashboard clicked over to 9:48 p.m., and the world around me was normal again. The road ahead was just a road, stretching off into the night, and the trees were just trees, unmoving and indifferent. I didn't look back. I didn't dare. My skin still tingled, the memory of that otherworldly presence lingering at the edges of my mind. I drove on, faster than before, desperate to leave that place behind. Everything all right, Miles? I could almost hear his voice again, but it wasn't from memory. It was real in the back seat, smug and possessive. The air in the car grew colder, the metallic taste stronger. I tightened my grip on the wheel, eyes fixed on the road ahead, refusing to glance in the rearview mirror where I knew I'd see his shadow. The clock on the dashboard flickered. 9:47 p.m. It's been 9:47 p.m. for hours.